Welcome everybody to episode number 14 of Comeback Conversations with my man Jason Schembri. Very excited to get this guy on. I remember his first minutes inside of this universe like it was yesterday. Very impactful guy. He's been around for a little while. Some of you guys that are maybe newer to this process haven't had the opportunity, the chance to spend any time listening to Jason, listening to his story. So that's the purpose of this episode. I want you guys to get with Jason's story. Really just hear from a pretty cool guy. Jason, tell brand new guys a little bit about just who you are, like now, and then we're going to kind of reverse engineer it into the journey, the path, the process. Right now, a little bit about yourself, man. Where do you live, work, family? You know, what's your world like today?
Awesome. Thanks, Dave. It's great to be here and have this chance to share with everybody. You know, it seems so long ago, and actually I look at the calendar now, and it's almost exactly 2 years ago that I joined the Comeback. So it was late October 2020. And it was a rough year for me, and you know, I was 50 pounds heavier than I am right now. Actually, like I was not looking healthy at all, and that year I turned 50 that year, and that was early in the year, like February 2020. I turned 50, and I remember telling myself, you know, something's got to change in my life, like. And I said to myself, 50 is going to be my best year. But I didn't know how, right? I just said it. It's going to be my best year. And in my mind, I just knew something had to change. I didn't know what it was going to be, how it was going to happen. And then here we were, and it was October, but the year's almost done. And nothing was better. Things were only worse. I was drinking more and more and more. There was COVID lockdown, so I was working from home. So all that meant to me, I could start drinking earlier, being more lazy, not doing anything. And I remember I'd seen some videos from Mark earlier in the year. And I remember looking at them thinking, you know, that looks really good for people that need help with drinking. But that's not me.
For other guys, right? Yeah, not
for other guys, not for me. And because I didn't think drinking was my problem. And actually, in hindsight, it wasn't. I was just using drinking to not do anything. To not go to the gym, to not be successful, to not be a better man, to not take control and actually go and do something with my life. It was a way to just sort of hide away, not do anything. And I did most of my drinking. I was just doing it on my own. But being at home most of that time, it was easy to do that, and just things were going nowhere. And I thought, I've got to change something. And I remembered seeing those ads with Mark on there. And I thought, I hadn't seen him for a little while, and I thought, you know, I should just go check it out, go find it somewhere. And lo and behold, I turn on Facebook, and one of the first things I see, Mark pops up again. It's almost like, you know, Siri's listening to you, or Lexa's listening to you, or something, and it's like, it's time to show that. And so, you know, I made the call, I joined up, and you know, I didn't really know what I was in for. I just thought, you know, I'll get some handy advice, some tips, whatever. But the more I got in and began, I realized this is going to change everything. And it wasn't too late for me to actually make that year, my 50th birthday year, the best year. And in hindsight, it actually was. But I mean, I was going nowhere, Dave. I was like, I think I told Rich once I was like the 60% guy. Like in my career, I was successful, but at 60% level, right? In relationships, I was getting by in relationships. I had no problems getting into relationships, but things in the background would mess it up. Drinking would mess it up, and guilt from the past would mess it up. I had no idea that it was even there or how to get rid of it. But from the first week that I started this program and joining this community, because it's not a program. At the beginning, you think, oh, it's a program I'm joining, and then it's going to be over. And then, you know, what do you do then? You go back to some old life? I don't know. But the questions that I started getting asked about, you know, who am I? What do I want? Why do I want it? I never asked myself that before. And I was 50 years old. I never asked that before. I just coasted through so much of life. And I knew that if I didn't do something, I'd look back at my life and think I just never achieved all the things that I wanted to achieve. And I had dreams, but they just stayed dreams. And that's frustrating. When dreams just stay as dreams and never manifest, and you know you didn't do anything about it, and you just drank it away, being frustrated that you didn't do it.
Talk about, that moment where you get back, you like make kind of the decision, like, all right, I've burned away 6, 7, 8 months or whatever it is of being 50s the year, and now it's October, the clock is fucking ticking, right? And you open that thing up, you do see that ad. Like, what was like the fear at that point? What was your fear? Was it like a fear of just, dude, I'm gonna be fucking just mediocre, I'm gonna drink myself to death, like, fitness, like health failures? Like, what was the top line fear, like the biggest concern, I guess, as you click the link?
Honestly, I think the biggest fear was that it would work. And I didn't know what that world looked like. I'd only dreamt about this. There was only a fantasy about how I could be successful and be awesome and be a legend and do all these great things. That had been so much of a fantasy in my mind and in my dreams for so many years. The idea that it could actually happen, I was a little bit afraid of that. Like, how do I do that? I don't know that world. I don't know that super success world where I'm awesome at everything. I was a bit afraid of that. And honestly, I didn't feel like I was worthy of that. You get into that routine of just accepting where you're at. And the idea of getting out of that, it's a big shift in who I was and how I was. And I was afraid that it was actually going to really work. And I was going to have to expose these things that were inside me, and I knew that doing that would make my life really good, but it was so uncomfortable to actually think, I'm going to actually do this. It might actually work. There was a fear there.
It's like telling yourself, it's good enough, but then looking in the mirror and saying, I'm not good enough. This sort of mediocre, right? And our level of mediocre is better than, Joe off the street in a lot of ways. But like, to us, we know fucking inside that there's more for us. But like, that is a fear that a lot of guys had. I had, like, what does that version of me look like? That's getting up in the morning, that's writing goals, that's living, this cool lifestyle. Like, fuck, I don't know what that looks like. And this fear of wanting to even go fucking find out, right? Kept me inside of a cage for years until you do click that link. Jason, once you get inside of the universe, right? What was it like when you got inside? You start seeing the community. You jump on the group accountability call. Like, what did that feel like?
Initially, the first thing you notice is, what, my problems and my worries and my secret drinking or lying about. I had a glass of wine last night. It's like a glass, meaning a bottle is glass,
64-ounce glass of wine.
Yeah. So that's the first thing, is that you realize, what, this is not an issue that's unique to me, which means that there's comfort in that, knowing, okay, I can share with these guys because they are going through it as well, and they're all at different stages of it. That was a great thing I noticed too, is there were guys that had been in there a week before me, and I could already see how much they had achieved in that one extra week. But there are also guys that had been in there, like yourself and Rich and other guys that had been there for a long time, and I could see that they'd gotten there, and I could hear about some of the steps that they took and some of the things that they were talking about. And I thought, so that gave me a lot of confidence to know, yes, I can do this too, because it isn't just me, and I'm not special in the way that, I'm different. It's not going to be the same for me. Nobody knows my problems, and my problems got to be worse than everybody else's. Wasn't like that at all. I realized that I was out of excuses by getting inside and asking and answering the questions. Like, the questions are like this, they seem so simple in hindsight, but if you don't ask yourself these questions, and if you don't look in the mirror, like, right away, I could see this is going to work. I knew right away, like very, very quickly, within days, I thought this is going to work. And then I started to get legitimately excited, and the fear started to disappear.
That's such a great example of like the hope. We talk about like the hope that it takes, like, hopeless dudes like don't click links and spend money to fix problems. Like, you're literally a man with no hope. I had a little bit, you had some, and you take that hope and then you surround the community, right? Now you're seeing other guys a week ahead, 2 weeks ahead, 2 months. Oh, these guys are killing it, why not me, right? And then that creates the belief. So we get the hope to get in, right? Surround you with the community, and then that creates the belief. And like, the way you just laid that out is like the absolute like best, like, real example of of that, because I came in super similar, man. Like, I thought I was the most special fucking guy on earth. Nobody could drink as much as me, lie about it, get away with it, still make money, still check this box and do that. I really thought I was special until I got inside of this community. I'm like, wow, there's like hundreds of us. We're just super fucking good liars. Okay, cool. If this guy can do it, why not me? And that's beautiful. As you go through this thing, you start getting on the calls. Like, I'll always remember the first, I think it was the global accountability call, where you spoke up and you talked about sleep until whatever it was, 3 in the afternoon. How did you go from, and I know we'll get into the fitness for you for sure, but like, how did you go from a dude that slept away the day to a guy that's getting up in the morning and attacking the day?
I think the first thing was starting to think about what I really wanted with my life and where I wanted to get to. And then the logical next step was, well, how do I get there? Recognizing very quickly how many hours in the day I was wasting. And I know, I think Dan was getting people to write down what you're doing in all these hours of the day and the things that you're getting done. And again, I'd see other guys, all the things they were getting done in a day. And I thought, why don't I have as much time in my day? And then I realized my mornings were, they barely existed. And so it was realizing all the time I had available. And I thought, now that I'm starting to think these dreams that I've had can be reality, but I'd always say, I just don't have time for that. And how many times, I don't have time for that. I don't have time for that. And all these things, all these plans go on the back burner. And so recognizing that time was available, then you just start using some tools. And for me, I think that tool that I used was the 5-second rule. That was just a little tool I used to start getting, because I had to build that habit, right, of getting up early. And of course, a lot easier when your head's clear, right, to get up early. That was a big difference right away. And I mean, it was easy for me to actually not drink anymore. Like, that was actually probably the easiest part for me, to be honest, because I was dedicated to this and I wanted that success, but I just had to know who I was and what I really wanted. And then I could start driving that. And one day leads into another, and I'm seeing all this time, and it's like lunchtime, and it's like I've already done more than a full day's work, and it's lunchtime, and I got the whole rest of the day. That was so exciting. Weekends were the best. The weekends lasted a week in my mind because of this, right? And it's like, look at all this time I have. It's like I was getting time back almost. That felt pretty cool.
It's like people say they can't find the time. Like, the time is the time, right? Can you create time? Yeah, you can. Can you learn to maximize it? Yes. A guy who had zero morning routine to a guy like, what's your morning routine now? Let these guys hear. Literally a man with you didn't even fucking see the morning, let alone a morning routine, right, on the weekends. What's the morning routine look like for you today?
Yeah, and I love it, and I do make it a routine as much as possible. So, you know what? Some might call me lazy, but I get up at 6. And it feels, to me, to think, I get up at 6 and I'm afraid to say it because I'll be thought that I'm lazy. So that's my routine here. So I get up at 6. I go, I check my weight every day, and I check my fat percentage and things like this. And I have a tracker that I have for that and monitor myself, because that's a big deal for me. But then I've paired my routine of journaling, which I didn't like doing. I paired that, or piggybacked it, with my morning coffee. And so I love my morning coffee, but I didn't like to journal. So I told myself I can only have my morning coffee when I'm journaling. And so I joined those together, and now I love them both together. So I sit down, I write all my goals for the day. I write down my thoughts about things that are going on. There's always root causes in my mind of, why am I having this one dream over and over? And I write about that and figure it out. Right? And I had a big issue about that. And I don't know if we'll get to it, but it was a pretty cool thing in the end. But so I write down all those things. What are the things I'm responsible for? What are the things I need to do for my fitness and for my dreams? Like, what are the things that I need to do today that are for what I want, not anybody else's shit, just my own stuff. And then that sets me up for the day. And that's usually about half a page, just writing that stuff. And then the journaling part might be another half a page. And then I'll sit down and I'll just get my mindset ready for the day. And I'll get into my calendar, put the things in place where they go. There's some work stuff. There's some marketing stuff with book stuff or workshop stuff. And then I get started. And by the time that's all happened, that's like an hour or so. The gym for me is a little bit later. It's sort of like a mid-morning, and then gym goes till about late lunchtime, and then I have lunch after that. So I could do gym in the morning, but I like to do my writing and my thinking and planning and get myself set up for the day, and then I've got that schedule. And if I run out of stuff and I've got the evening free, which I usually do, I can do more stuff, or I can just enjoy some social time.
It's like this constant, like, on to the next thing. Like, you just laid that out. Like, this is like it's a routine. It's what we do. It's how you live every single day. You said something cool. You said, I think guys I don't know if it's like 50-50, but the drinking part was kind of easy, right? Like, I wasn't that dude. The drinking part was really fucking, I overcomplicated it, but it didn't just go away. It was a thing. And I think some guys will come in and really like struggle their ass off with that piece and then get on to the next. But like, so for you, that was easy. What was hard? What was the hardest?
I think the breaking the old routines and getting away from the things that were kind of like, I guess in a way they would look like what might be addictions, even though I don't agree that there's addictions, but doing lazy things. And so the hard things were, okay, I'm getting up in the morning and I've got all this stuff done. Now I can stop and reward myself. So I've done a little bit. Now I just want to get a reward. And the reward is, well, I'll go back and sit on the couch for the rest of the whole evening and watch a couple of movies or something. And then I think now I've wasted that evening. I had such a great day up to that point. And so I was losing that drive. And I shared a video not long ago about finishing strong. And that's something I still work on. And so like the war is not over, right? But we've won some big fucking battles. but the war may always be there. The war of life is always going to be there. Like, we haven't fixed everything now and now everything's perfect for the rest of our lives. We still have to do the work. It's just the work is easier and it depends on how much we want to drive it. But I'd get to a certain point where I've done all these great things. Now I want my reward. I want my dopamine injection for doing all these great things. And I realize that I've got to think of this at the end of the day, at the end of the week, at the end of a 90-day goal. That's where I've got to push the hardest, because that's where I'll feel that I've got the best reward. So I had to stop doing, I did this and this and this. Now I can blow off the rest of the day and just do nothing. That's what it still is hard for me to do that. And, one of the things that helps the most for that is seeing you guys in there and seeing Mark in there. He just drives like a machine. And I think those guys, they're still driving. They're still driving it hard. And I've seen guys like Richard Branson and guys like that I've followed on LinkedIn or something. They keep driving always. And then when I think about it, I realize all of doing those things, that is what I enjoy, right? And so I don't have to take that. The reward is in the work as well. And I had them separated. There was the work and there was the reward. And those things needed to be married together. So that you're experiencing the reward as part of the work, and then you just want to keep going and keep doing more.
It's like checkpoints. I'm sure you've heard me say this, like checkpoints versus finish lines. Like, everything in my life was like finish lines, right? All right, you finished this deliverable at work, you finished this day at whatever, like you got these 4 tasks done. Okay, foot off the gas, you win, celebration time. You're the man, you got it done. Now it's time to step away, right? And you talk about like finish strong, finish strong, finish strong, and then it's get on to the next. And when you can, for everybody that's going to be listening to this, understand, like, it's never really done. What does done even mean? Like, those are the questions that you start asking yourself. Like, what did I really accomplish? Like, when you're on those life goals, when you create big shit that you want in your life, like, it's not done easily. And we sometimes have such a lack of patience with like the process, right? Like, fitness is a great example. Like, you want to run a marathon in 90 days, you're not going to get the trophy, the finish line, whatever, for 90 fucking days. So when you can fall in love with walking a mile today because it gets you closer to that, 2 miles tomorrow because it gets you closer to that, and then your win, right, that dopamine hit, is the win is not crossing the finish line inside of the marathon. The win is today I did what I said I was going to do. I was going to walk 1 mile. I think that's where where I struggled out of the gate, all of us, we're rewiring sometimes 30, 40, 50 years of like conditioned behavior. Like if I was good, I would get candy, right? If I was good, I would get to watch my show. If I did this, then I would get that. Like that starts fucking really young. The reward used to be bourbon. The reward used to be a fucking ice cream cone. The reward might be lay down and watch Netflix. But like that is a subconscious wiring that is like instilled in us like very early age. And I think that's where guys struggle a lot out of the gate, is understanding like it's not just this thing that needs to be solved, it's all of the entanglements, the bullshit, the stories we tell ourselves, the depth underneath. Certainly just being in cruise control for 10, 20, 30 years, like we're emotionally like we didn't grow. Like we're a little bit stunted, right? Like I kind of picked up our shit sometimes in, teenage 20. We just did the same thing for 20 years. Like I didn't grow in 20 years. I kind of stayed stuck. I didn't handle emotions. I didn't ask myself questions like who am I? What do I want? I don't know. Like I'll just do what I did yesterday, I guess, right? Like the best answer to that question was, I don't know, a guy that's going to like retire at 62, like, and do, I don't know what dudes that retire at 62 do. Like that's the plan. Like, with where you're at right now, you've unlocked so many different levels inside of your own development, your own growth. Like, talk about that book sitting next to you, man. Like, how did that happen? 2 years ago, you couldn't get out of bed and didn't have a morning routine. Now you're on the cover of your book that you wrote. Like, get into it.
It's such a weird thing to be in that place, and I don't remember what week it was at the beginning of my comeback journey where we started writing down those life goals. But the top of my list every time was to be an author. And I went back within the first month. I went back and I found my notes about this book, because I'd been huge, right? I was probably 320 pounds, honestly. I could have even been more, but I was big. I was unrecognizable. Like visually, if you looked at those pictures of me, there's no way you'd look at this one and say that's Jason. And I'd started losing weight, but I'd keep gaining it back. And I never knew why, right? Never knew why I was gaining it back. And so I started to learn all these different tools, but, I never could have finished this book without the comeback, because I didn't have the final pieces. It's like I'd had like 50 jigsaw puzzles, and every single one of them was missing 20 pieces. And every time you make this jigsaw puzzle and it's like, I can kind of figure out what it is, all the pieces, I can't finish it. And so I needed those last pieces to do that, the core things, the deeper things, and then they just fit together so well. So now I know how to maintain at this lower weight. So now I'm under 200 when I was over 300, and I'll tell you, it feels awesome to be there. But this the stuff for this book started in 2010, 2011, something like that, and it was one of those dreams that just sat there forever. And it never got there. And so, and it was never going to, without solving all of the deeper issues about what was behind everything and what was going on. And so having the time, like making that time now, enabled me to start doing those things and start letting go of things that I just thought, this is what I'm supposed to do in my life. This is what everybody does in their life. You do this, you do that. Like you said, you retire at 62. What does that even mean? I didn't even know what the word retire would mean anymore, actually. I might have to retire from Australian football because it takes me 2 weeks to recover from getting beat up on the field, just because physically, can't handle as much punishment anymore. I could understand that in terms of retirement, but everything else is I just want to keep doing these things that I like doing. And it's like, that's not a job. It's not work. It's just, I'm doing the things that I want to do, that I want to achieve. And that's what my life is. And it's fantastic to be there. And now I have to go back to my goals. Like, well, I've written the book now. Well, what do I do now? Right. It's not over. I can't go into retirement. Rich kept telling me 3 books. Well, I've got 2 more books in process now. And I've got all these other things to spin off from it. So it doesn't end. It grows. And it gets better, and it gets more enjoyable. And the rewards are in doing those things. The rewards are in living the way you want to live, not in do this and get a reward, do this and get a reward. The rewards are in living all of this together. It's pretty phenomenal to be there.
You could say that, yeah. That's kind of put it mildly. Like with your fitness journey, like before you got consistent, were you that dude that would like lose a bunch of weight and then gain it back, right? Like you are on that like little cycle of like, big sprint, I feel great, fuck it, blow it up. Like, did that? I mean, it's a build and burn mentality. Did that ripple through other stuff in your life?
Oh yeah, and that was like I could lose like in a couple of months I could lose 40 pounds, no problem. So it'd all come down, and then there'd be this little window of time where you felt great, and it's like, look at me, I'm awesome, and I'm got definition back, whatever, and then it's just back up again, and then you get back to the time, it's like, what just happened? Like, how did that happen? And it's almost you're not even aware of it. And I had to sort of find what was behind that thing. I mean, I had guilt from when I was 12 years old, so from 40 years ago. And I was having the same recurring dream for 40 bloody years before I finally figured out what it meant. And I had to go and confess some things to my parents and apologize and get forgiveness. And it was just crazy and I started sobbing after this happened. And I thought, it's all good. And then I just started sobbing, and it was coming up from deep in my in my lower abdomen kind of thing, this racking of sobbing, like it was crazy. And it went away, and then I was good, and then never had the dream again, right? And then this stuff, this guilt and shame and things like that always came out when I was drinking. It's like my body would create a conflict so that my internal guilt could vent out this frustration. And so that would cause havoc in relationships and with family. But it will also, you want to cover up this stuff. So what do? You drink, you eat, you be lazy, you just tune out the world and don't do anything. As you chip away at all these things and clear out each one, and it only just started with asking yourself questions, thinking, why do I do this and why do I do that? And you start cast your mind back into, where did I get stuck? That's a good one. Like, was there a point that I got stuck and something, an incident or a trauma that happened? And then it's like, it all starts unraveling, and then you can clear it away. You can clear it away, and then you're just free, right? And freedom's my number one F. It was always my number one F. I knew I could get my fitness. I knew my faith was strong. I knew that, I could resolve things with my family by clearing things out. But the freedom, that's always the one I wanted to get to. And it always seemed far away because on the list of F's, it's further down, a bit further down the list behind some other ones, right? Finances as well. And so getting to that F was always my goal. And I realized that all these other things combine to get me to that. And the freedom that's all of those things to me, and gets to that foundation side of it. It's
I think most men fight the fight that they're most conditioned to fight. You fought the weight loss fight, right? We fought the alcohol fight. The ability to fight the same shit over and over and over again. Like, in some ways, I fucking enjoyed it, right? Like, and I didn't really enjoy it, but there was a part of me that did, because I knew how to fight that, right? It's like fighting the same guy in a boxing ring. Like, I'd love to fight somebody different, but I just know how to fight this guy. Like, we've done it so many fucking times. Like, even though I don't like it, like, there's a part of me that did, because it was familiar, because it was known. I knew how to, like, to the weight loss. Like, I knew how to do that pendulum swing, man. I knew how to set a house on fire and then put the house out. How did this happen? I don't know. Let me put it out though. Like, I kept myself in like a cage of fighting the same shit, like battling the same stuff over and over, because it was familiar and it was comfortable. Like, when you got comfortable being uncomfortable, you kind of step outside of yourself a little bit. You start, like you said, asking these questions, like, where did I get stuck? What a great fucking question. Anybody listening to this right now, like, if you're stuck, ask yourself, write it down. Like, when did I get stuck? It's a cool way of looking at it, right? Because, we have to talk about alcohol a little bit, I guess. But like, when that was such a big deal to me, I think it was on one of the conversations with Rich, like, when did drinking stop being fun? When you're 20, like, everything's fucking fun. When did it become a chore? When did it become like a fuck, I don't even feel like doing this. Like, I feel like shit, why am I doing this? Like, for you, when did, if it did, like, when did drinking, like, shift to, like, this fucking, this thing that wasn't serving you anymore. And realistically, it's not really serving us. But like, where were you in life where you just said like, fuck, like this isn't even fun, but I'm doing it.
Yeah, and me, it was a lot of childhood things that led to it, and it was just looking for ways to cover up the guilt that I didn't even really know was there. I think some of the things too for me, I had a pretty dysfunctional family. It wasn't a lot of affection and things like that. So you got to go seek it out. But I didn't have a lot of confidence because there was no one that taught me how to have real confidence. And so then you discover alcohol, and it's like, hey, this feels like confidence. I like this, but it's such a frustrating cycle because I'm pretty much a wuss when it comes to hangovers, and so I've never handled them well. I don't know if anyone really does, but I never really got used to handling them. So it was always alcohol always felt like reward and then pay for it after, like rather than do the work and then have a reward. Usually, if I do the work, I don't need that kind of reward because it's the reward in itself to achieve something. Where it's always this, it's convenient to just take a reward, and then tomorrow, king of procrastination. It's like I even try to use procrastination now to, if procrastination stopped me from doing things, I'll use it to stop me from doing bad things as well. And so flip it on its head and say, I'll show you if you want to hang around. But the stuck things for me, there were incidences mostly in my childhood. And for me, they were mostly relationship things where I just didn't feel confident or comfortable because I just didn't have the tools. And so you look for something that can help you. And so for me, it ended up being alcohol. You have some drinks, then you can handle a situation, a social situation, and then it becomes a crutch, and you can't do these things without it. And you can't ever even imagine how you could do all these things that you used to do without it. I know. Earlier in my comeback, there were a few guys talking about having sex sober, and they were terrified of it. They thought, "Well, how am I going to handle this?" But they know they soon find out. It's that's way better because you actually and you remember it. You get to remember it.
There's a lot of firsts that you get to do when you kind of get your freedom. You talk about freedom. Talk about freedom, man. Like, what does that mean to you? Like, just go all in on freedom right now, Jason.
Yeah, that's a good one. And I love talking about freedom, and I realized throughout going through this process I always thought freedom was not having responsibilities. The little amount of responsibilities that I have, the more freedom I must have. And I realized eventually, trial and error and just experiencing it, that it's actually not true. I have more freedom by taking responsibility for things. And the way I would put it is, if there's a situation, let's say there's a conflict between you and I, Dave. If I don't take any responsibility for it, one, it may not get fixed at all. I have no freedom then. Or two, you take responsibility for it instead, and now I'm at your mercy of how you're going to deal with it. Where's my freedom in that? I got no say at all. So freedom to me is grabbing that responsibility, take responsibility for everything I can, because then I've got the control to decide what happens next. I get a say in what the outcome is, and I get to choose what I'm going to go and do. So freedom for me is like having that control and responsibility over things so that I can do the things I want to do, go after the things I want to go after. And I can't go after my dreams without taking responsibility for those things. I can't just say no responsibility, so now I'm free. You get nowhere. You'll just get nowhere. You might have some freedom, but you'll achieve nothing because you're not doing anything. Like, if I take responsibility, I'm the man, and I'm the one that decides what's going to happen. And that's where my freedom is. That's my perspective on freedom, for sure.
It's super cool, man. Because I did think of it the same, early, like before this comeback. Like, freedom would be a lack of responsibility. I don't have anything to do. I don't have to respond to anything. I don't have any responsibilities. Like, freedom now obviously it's ownership, right? Like you just laid it out just perfectly. Like if nothing's on you, you have no responsibility, then I have all the control like over you, because you have absolved yourself from responsibilities. That's very well put. That's cool. Very good. What's, talked about the two other books, like what's next for you, man? Like you've unlocked so many levels of life, like your mindset, and it's this constant, like, unlocking, like you're at a high level. Like what's next for you?
Yeah, it's and I just did a big resetting of life goals the other day because I need to realign them on a regular basis. And so one of the things that I've written in my life goals early was I wanted to travel a lot. And my kids are grown up, right? I've got a son in Australia married and I've got a granddaughter there. I've got a daughter, she's in Alabama, she's married. I had all these stepkids, they're all married with tons of kids. And so that life part for me with family is over. And so I'm here at my girlfriend's place, and we've got a great life together. She's a writer as well, and we both love traveling. So we've just decided that half of our year, every year, is going to be traveling. But I love doing this work with books and workshops and speaking. And so everywhere I go, I'm going to run a workshop. Everywhere I go, I'm going to connect with a bookstore. Everywhere I go, I'm going to go to a writing conference. I've got a second book coming after this one that's called Critical Moments, that's going to talk about how to identify when these moments come, because I got so messed up from moments in my past where I just didn't recognize something important was happening. And you just go along with the flow, don't take responsibility. So that can happen though, and it still happens. So I want to delve into how to recognize those moments and make the right choices so that you go in the right direction. There's so many ways you could go. And I'm also going to write a fiction book as well that I've started writing, that I had an idea for. There was like a grisly murder across the street from me last winter, and there was all this blood all over the snow, and there was all this weird stuff going on, and it just gave me an idea. So I'm going to write a fiction book as well. And I always wanted to do that. And so it feels great. I'm still doing financial work as a base to leverage me into this. I can't just go into that because there's nothing there yet. So I just found that balance that works for me, that I like. And I can go traveling around wherever I want to go. It's Hawaii is for December, and Australia's for February and March. And after that, we'll come back and tour around the US a little bit while there's some renovations going on here. And that's the life that appeals to me. And so I just want to keep sharing what I've learned, especially on the weight management side, because I've gone through so many ups and downs with that, and have tools from that are out that they align really well with the comeback, but they're just more specifically related on the weight management side, like little tools and little fitness things that I feel confident in sharing with people. I can stand there and say, yeah, I did it. Here's how I did it. And I want to start sharing that instead of sitting in an office and saying, here's your financial reports and here's this variance that we had compared to the budget. It's like, well, there's just I don't have any passion for that anymore. It's fun and I'm good at it, but I don't need to do that anymore because I have the freedom now to follow my dreams because I go after them. So it's a pretty cool life, and I feel very free, but I have responsibilities, but I get to do what I want when I want, and I have lots more time to do it. And so I do.
It truly is like the have it all lifestyle, from a guy that was corporate, was caged, was sleeping the day away, was complacent, was average. Like to see you now, like the way you just laid out, like what's next, like dude, it's beautiful, right? You get to do like exactly what you want to do. Like you get to travel, you're writing, you're speaking, like you're doing what you need to do to create the money until you can go completely on just that. It's absolutely awesome, dude. Like I couldn't be more like proud of you and excited for your journey, dude. What would you tell a guy I'll ask this: what would you tell a guy right now that's not inside of this universe yet? Right? Maybe he's scared. When do I click the link? And I watched this Mark's ads for probably 3 months before I actually was like, all right, let me talk to a human. What would you tell a guy right now that's hesitating, dithering, super close maybe, but just is scared? Right? Like I was terrified of a bunch of things. Like my fear was like, what if it doesn't work? What if it does work? Right? Similar to what you said. What if it's a scam? All the bullshit. Like, what would you tell a guy that's right on the door right now of being able to go from where you went to where you are now and then to what's next? What would you tell that guy?
Yeah, well, for sure. Obviously, I mean, my background was in accounting, in financial management. So I'm black and white, data driven, and so the question about is this real, is it authentic? That was something that was going to be very important to me. So no doubt, unquestionably, it's real. I mean, I've been through it. I've lived it. My ethics and my integrity are always at the highest level. So anybody can trust in that this thing is real. The thing that about the being afraid to do it, I'm 52 now, and I feel great. Starting from 50 going forward now, it's like the beginning of my life. I would never, if I could go back to my 30-year-old self or even younger, do you want to waste the next 20 years of your life before you actually start to live your life? I mean, honestly, like who would say, yes, I want to do that? Yeah, sign me up for that. I want to waste the next 20 years and then I'll start. No, like I feel regret that I didn't start so much sooner. Where could I be now if I didn't? Yet I still feel great now, and I still got all this ahead of me. But the other thing too is about the urgency of it. It always seems that all the little things in our lives, we let them become more urgent than the big things in our life. Because you can take care of a little thing, and let it be urgent. But that big thing that's sitting there, you have to make that thing more important and more urgent. So me doing my book and pursuing that life, in my mind, I had to make sure that was what was more urgent. But I couldn't just think it in my mind. I had to say it to myself out loud. Like I had to look in the mirror and say it, that this is what I really want. Because if it just stays in my head, there's these other parts in my head that are just like, well, we'll do that later. We'll do that later. It always wants to delay. You have to get it out. You have to say it. You have to look at yourself. And that's when it becomes real to you. You have to say to yourself, what do I really want? And make it more important than the things that are bullshit. Otherwise, you will never actually pull that trigger and do it. You'll be way more uncomfortable in 20 years from now if you hadn't done it than if you start right now. And the start is only one little trigger pull. It's not that big to do that little bit of a start. Then the next day. It's not. You don't get bombarded all at once and you're just pummeled by it and you can't handle it. It is pieces and steps, but they all build one on top of another. And you feel great all the way through. Yes, there's some discomfort, but no more discomfort than pissing it all away for 20 years and doing nothing. That's the worst thing. Like no one would say, sign me up for that, right? So if you're not going to put up your hand and say, sign me up for wasting the next 20 years of my life, then you should put up your hand to say, sign me up for living the life I want. Which of those two do you choose? It should be an obvious choice, right? So choose the one that you want and go out and be a legend for yourself and do the things that you want. Because everyone that is in this and part of this can do it. And I've seen that for the last 2 years.
It's really cool the way you laid that out. Being a legend in your own life, like really, literally being able to step back and be the author, which you are, of your story. You wrote your story, like, and you're casting the vision for like the next, 50 years of life of what that's going to look like. You pissed away a couple of decades, like myself and like others. That is what it is, right? And that when you can get to that point of like, this is just the foundation now. Okay, cool. What do I get to build on it? And you're literally with your pen every day writing the world that you want to live in. It's absolutely amazing, dude. Anything else you want to say? Dude, I'd love to wrap it up right around here, dude. I loved the reward mentality stuff that we talked about, like the way that we have to like do 3 or 4 things and then take our little reward. Go back to, childhood, man. That's where that started for me. Excellent done. But yeah, anything you want to leave these guys with?
Yeah, the last thing for sure, and it's always there, is that it doesn't end. You don't get to a spot where I'm fixed now and everything's good. You do have to keep working on this every day. And it's not like you're just doing it to maintain. I'm still getting that little bit stronger and better every day. I'm being a better person every day, but I have to keep doing it. If there's sometimes there's days where I just didn't sit and write it. It's almost like, just take a break. But that one day, it's like it's a bit scary that day. Like, it's like, well, what did I do? What did I plan? I feel much more comfortable when I do put those things down. I do my writing, and I work out what I want to get done. That is an everyday thing, but it is not a chore. It may begin at the very beginning, like, this is a pain, this is a chore. That changes very, very quickly. It changes very quickly, but you do have to keep doing that work, because, like I was saying, the war of this is your whole life, not just up to this point where you say, now I'm good, I've won the war. No, you've won some battles, and you may have won some pretty big battles, but you're always in that because you're living every day. So how do you want to live every day? You gotta do the work.
Always on to the next challenge, brother. That's it. I'm gonna wrap her up, dude. I appreciate you so much. I love your story, like your journey, like and where you are now is awesome. Where you're gonna be, I can't fucking wait. So appreciate you, man. Proud of you, brother. And yeah, I'll see you on the call, man.
Thank you. Awesome. Thank you, Dave. See you later, buddy.
I am a comeback. If you're not dead, then you're not done. I ain't dead, so I'm here to show everyone. I am a comeback. It's not a disease, it's a choice. So I had to choose. I refuse to lose.